Alrighty, another New Year's has passed, and we all know what that means. A brand new year of films is on its way. So before the days of 2020 tick away too quickly, I thought it best to look ahead at what's slated to release in order to pick my top 10 most anticipated films of 2020. Now, it's important to note a couple of things before I kick it all off. Firstly, being so early in the year, there are plenty of films that have yet to have proper trailers release, or to have even begun being advertised all that much, if at all. So, most of the films on this list are going to be bigger blockbusters because, well, they have already begun being plugged. So, like with every year, I am sure there will be some amazing smaller films to come out down the line that just haven't made their way onto my radar just yet. Secondly, I realized that as I was making this list, there isn't anything coming out that I am hugely excited about. I mean, there is stuff that I am really curious about and will definitely buy my tickets for enthusiastically, but there isn't anything that I'm dying to see, like I was with Avengers Endgame, John Wick Chapter 3, and Godzilla King of the Monsters last year. And thirdly, like with all of my top 10 lists, this is entirely personal to me. I will try my best to explain my reasoning behind all of my choices, but I'm not expecting you to agree with me on all of my picks. Just be respectful, and if you have choices that I didn't pick, feel free to share them in the comments section down below. Cool? Sweet. Let's do this. To kick things off, I am going to be throwing in an honorable mention. Initially, this was just going to be on the list itself, but I fell behind a little, and by the time this list comes out, the film will already have been released, and I will likely have seen it. But I wanted to include it anyway because out of all my drafts for this list, it was always on it, and that film is Underwater. While it is always risky to put a January film on a most anticipated list, since January and most of February has a history of being reserved for the leftover schlock that Hollywood didn't think good enough to release anywhere else, something about Underwater seems different. Firstly, it is from a solid indie director, William Eubank. It has a solid cast, Kristen Stewart, TJ Miller, Jessica Henwick, Vincent Cassel, and John Gallagher Jr., and it has a solid visual aesthetic and premise, the latter of which doesn't seem wholly original, but Underwater looks like it's added enough of its own flair to keep it engaging and fun. And secondly, this film was a Fox product and was likely mostly complete before Fox's acquisition by Disney. So clearly Disney saw something in the project to keep it around and not just can. So my hope is that it's a solid enough film that Disney felt confident in releasing but put into a January slot because it didn't want to interfere with any of its other upcoming films. At least that's the hope, because I wouldn't mind being able to kick off my 2020 film year with a solid, albeit seen it before time at the movies. Now to the top 10 list proper. Coming in at number 10, Mulan. While I have never been into classic Disney and all that, I have always loved Mulan. The songs, the characters, the humor, great. It's a family favorite, in fact. And while the Disney live-action remakes have been hit or miss with me, I have found that I tend to really like the ones that change up the original either visually, a la Aladdin, or narratively, a la Dumbo. Cause, I mean, if it doesn't add anything new to what's already there, what's the point? Thankfully, Mulan seems to be placing itself into that category. While it is a little jarring to think that Mushu and the catchy songs won't be in the film, I really love how it's trying instead to tap into the original Chinese story more and style itself and take influence from Chinese cinema. While granted the liberal changes to the original animated film could backfire and cause some backlash, in fact I am already seeing a little of that in various comment sections, I'm personally going to be in a seat excited to see Mulan on its opening weekend. Number 9, The Gentleman. Another January film, I know, but it's also a Guy Ritchie film, and I have always loved Guy Ritchie films. Hell, even when they're not necessarily the greatest, there's something about his visual style and unique narrative structure that entrances me and makes me want to watch and rewatch them over and over. And The Gentleman looks as though it is Ritchie returning to his crime comedy / drama roots, think 1999's Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and 2001 Snatch, and I am really excited to see how Ritchie now approaches the genre with his now more honed talents. Number 8, Wonder Woman 1984. While I enjoyed Man of Steel and Batman v Superman enough, it wasn't until Wonder Woman hit theaters that I became rather invested in the DCEU. Not only was it great to see the lesser utilized of DC's core trio finally brought to life on the big screen in all her glory, but Wonder Woman was simply a fun, action-packed, entertaining film with a great cast, particularly with Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman / Diana Prince herself, and since the film's first director, Patty Jenkins, has returned to helm this second outing, I'm intrigued. Number 7, Black Widow. While DC hit it off with the first female-led superhero blockbuster via Wonder Woman, Marvel has made it their goal to add competition to the market. While they started this goal with last year's Captain Marvel, they are following it up with their first standalone Black Widow film, and it's about time if you ask me. She's been a part of the MCU for, 10 years now? And while I was only moderately excited about the film when it was first announced, its recent trailer has really struck me. The action looks stellar, the story doesn't seem forced into the MCU, and the new cast, such as Florence Pugh, David Harbour, and Rachel Weisz, seems fun, and like a good ensemble for Scarlett Johansson's Natasha Romanoff. It seems, as of this moment, like the post-Endgame MCU is definitely going to be just as exciting and fun as it was prior to last year's explosive and unprecedented cinematic event. Number 6, Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Yup, yet another comic book movie, and this one might actually be my most anticipated of them all. Not only does it seem unique narratively and visually, but it also just seems bonkers. Directed by a talented art house indie director, Cathy Yan, from the creative mind of the quickly rising Margot Robbie, who has come such a long way since she blew into people's lives with 2013's The Wolf of Wall Street, and featuring some action helmed by John Wick director slash choreographer Chad Stahelski, as well as a great cast who all seem really on board. I'm particularly excited for Ewan McGregor's Roman Sionis slash Black Mask. I couldn't be more intrigued. I just love seeing wild visions such as this one come to fruition, and Birds of Prey looks like it's taking a lot of risks, and I hope that it does really well and encourages people to make some more unique and bonkers comic book films in the future, because there are loads of insane comic books out there, and I'd love to see some of them adapted. Number 5, Dune. While I'm not wholly familiar with the source material of Dune myself, I know a lot of people that are. It's one of those huge sci-fi phenomena that has yet to be given a worthy shot at the big screen. Yes, David Lynch gave it his best back in 1984 that some people still herald as a guilty pleasure, but all of my die-hard Dune friends hate it. Thankfully, visionary director Denis Villeneuve, known for some of the best films to have come out in the past decade, think Prisoners, Enemy, Sicario, Arrival, and Blade Runner 2049, has made adapting Dune to the big screen his passion project. And while this first film is, hopefully, considering Villeneuve's second planned film is yet to be officially greenlit, only going to be the first of multiple, since adapting Dune will take more than a few hours, I'm sure it will be fantastic. I mean, it has Villeneuve behind the camera, a stellar cast including Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaacs, and Zendaya, Jason Momoa, Dave Bautista, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Javier Bardem, and so many more, and it is based on a book series loved by many. So yeah, I'm excited for it, and I haven't even seen any set photos or trailers for it. Number 4, A Quiet Place 2. John Krasinski surprised everyone with his 2018 horror hit A Quiet Place. It took such a simple premise, that being a monster movie where the monsters are attracted to sound so our heroes need to stay silent to survive, and stretched it to its full potential wonderfully. He made it about parenthood, communication, language, and so much else, and the film's gimmick of being almost entirely silent through most of its runtime, only interrupted by the occasional dialogue, sound effect, or intermittently spread out music from its excellent soundtrack, it made seeing the film in the theater an experience not to be missed. And while I wasn't sure what could be done with its inevitable sequel, the film made too much money to not get a sequel. With John Krasinski back behind the camera and a solid first trailer, I'm curious and excited to see where the second chapter takes the story. Number 3, No Time to Die. James Bond has been an icon for nearly 60 years, so of course whenever a new Bond film comes out, it's going to generate some excitement. Daniel Craig has been Bond now for 14 years, and while none of his follow-ups have come close to the spectacle of his first outing, 2006's Casino Royale, I must admit that I have enjoyed all 4 of his films. Even his lesser ones have grown on me with repeat viewings, and No Time to Die being the final film with Craig in the leading role makes me beyond excited to see where he takes the iconic character and how he is going to top off his tenure as Bond. And of course, being a huge fan of Mr. Robot, which concluded excellently by the way, I am really stoked to see Rami Malek take on the role of the latest Bond villain. Number 2, Godzilla vs. Kong. While the precursor to this film, Godzilla King of the Monsters, was not amazing, I found it extremely enjoyable. And of course, being a fan of all things kaiju, seeing Godzilla and King Kong duke it out on the big screen has gotta be something worth seeing. And while this is not the first time that these two icons have clashed, this new version of the Smackdown cannot possibly be any worse than that original 1962 catastrophe, which features a man wrestling a stuffed tiger and a lot of Japanese actors in blackface. And even better, Legendary Pictures have listened to the slight disappointments that people had with King of the Monsters and have actually pushed Godzilla vs. Kong back 8 whole months in order to make the film the best that it can be. So that's gotta count for something. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic for this film, but I can't deny that I am a Godzilla fan through and through, and anytime my giant atomic breath-wielding city-leveling buddy decides to make an appearance, I'm gonna be in a theater on opening night to see him. And finally, my number 1 most anticipated film of 2020, Tenet. Christopher Nolan is one of those directors who, when he announces another project, will generate buzz just because it's his latest project. And this is for good reason. Since 1998, Nolan has provided us with a plethora of groundbreaking films that have made significant impacts on pop culture. Memento, the Dark Knight trilogy, The Prestige, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Inception. And while some are better than others, of course, all of these films are, simply put, amazing pieces of cinema. So when he announced that his next film was going to be called Tenet, before anything about its plot was revealed, it jumped to the top of my most anticipated films list. And now, seeing as how its cast includes a number of up-and-coming actors, including John David Washington, hot off of BlacKkKlansman, and Robert Pattinson, who has been rebranding himself with a string of excellent indie films, as well as some already established actors such as Michael Caine and Kenneth Branagh, and that its first trailer seemed wild, creative, engaging, and wholly unique, I am even more excited for it. And it's funny because, to be honest, I still have no clue what it's actually about. But I hope that fact means that my first viewing of it will be surprising, exciting, engaging, and memorable. And since it's from Nolan, I have no doubt that it will be. And there we go, my top 10 most anticipated films of 2020. Thanks for watching, I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like. If you want to add anything, such as your own top 10 most anticipated films of 2020 list, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I have one more top 10 list in the works that will hopefully be out before the end of the month. I just want to spend time on it to make sure that my choices feel right. And I also will have a review of Underwater coming out within the next week or so keep an eye out for those. Until next time, I am Professor Kino, and I look forward to our future discussions.